Are ready. You may begin.
Hi, my name is Gibson, and thanks for coming to my TED Talk. So today, I'm going to be talking to you about risk-taking. I'm going to talk to you about three things: the motivations of risk-taking, what is happening in the body while you're taking risks, and the impacts of these behaviors. But before I start, let me show you a little story. So 7 months ago, this was me. After this happened, I ended up here. I was in a life-threatening bike crash where I ruptured my spleen and cut an artery and had to get airlifted to the hospital. So while I was in the hospital, I thought to myself, I'm never going to get on a bike again. But here I am, 7 months later, waiting for the snow to melt so that I can get back on my bike. And I think to myself, why? Why do I want to get back on my bike and continue to take risks when I well know that I have gotten injured and that I can continue to get injured doing so? Which brings me to my research question. What are the physical and mental motivations behind risk-taking behaviors, and what are the impacts of those behaviors? So first, I'm going to talk to you about the motivations. And the first motivation I'm going to talk to you about is Red Bull and GoPro. So I'm going to start with this video. So this is a downhill mountain bike event called Red Bull Rampage.
Oh my god.
And in this event, mountain bikers have to ride down super skinny ridges and do big jumps and do as big as tricks as possible to get the best line down the mountain in order to get the best score. And obviously this is being filmed on an action camera, as we know as the GoPro. Oh no. Well, I'm just gonna continue on. So,
We're all terrified.
so Red Bull and GoPro definitely are a motivation because they glorify these sports. They only show the good and the awesome parts of these sports. They never touch on the impacts, the injuries, the consequences that come from these risky behaviors. They always show the crazy tricks that these athletes do, or these people that ride their bikes on top of suspension bridges, or flying planes upside down, or hanging out of a plane before you go skydiving, or massive jumps at that event that you just watched, Red Bull Rampage. And when people see these videos and photos, they are influenced to do these extreme sports. People do this for the adrenaline rush, and they continue to do this because of the high that they get from that adrenaline rush. And they also do it because of the publicity that they get. They want to get their 15 minutes of fame. So they get a GoPro and record themselves doing these crazy things, post it online, hoping that they're going to get hundreds of thousands, maybe millions of views, and then they'll get their name out there for a short period of time, just like those one-hit wonders musicians. So the second motivation that I looked into is ADHD. So ADHD is actually fairly common. 6 to 9% of children and 3 to 5% of adults have ADHD. Pretty crazy. Now, how does it connect to risk-taking? Well, let me tell you. So people with ADHD have been linked to having lower dopamine levels in their brain and also get bored more easily than the average person. Now, these can influence people to seek out things to fulfill that dopamine reward or that boredom, which can lead into risk-taking behaviors. This also can start to become my next motivation, which is addiction. Now, addiction is commonly connected with drugs, but when addiction and adrenaline come up together, people typically think about adrenaline junkies. But although it is actually very rare to physically become addicted to the substance adrenaline, you actually become addicted to the risk-taking behavior. Now, how does addiction work? This is how. So inside your brain, you have a reward pathway, which is blue, located in your limbic system. And the reward pathway does exactly what it says. It rewards you when you do something well. So, for instance, if Ben drinks water, his reward pathway is going to reward him with dopamine, hopefully teaching him that, hey, I'm enjoying drinking this water. I should keep this up. And you can see how this would play into the risk-taking because if you go do a huge ski jump and you land, you're going to get rewarded for it, which is teaching yourself that this is a good feeling and I want to keep doing this. So, aside from these motivations, I'd like to talk to you about what's actually going on in your body. So inside your body you have these two things called adrenal glands, and they're located on top of each kidney. You have two of them. And what they are responsible for is producing epinephrine and cortisol. Epinephrine is just a scientific term for adrenaline. Now, epinephrine and cortisol work together inside your adrenal glands. The epinephrine is your high. It's what your adrenaline rush. And the cortisol is what maintains that adrenaline rush and keeps it from getting out of control. So, but this isn't the only thing that's going on in your body while you're taking risks. You also, would you believe me if I told you that you were up to 40 times stronger when you're on an adrenaline rush? Pretty crazy, right?
On fire. He ran to the home but had a hard time getting inside. He saw one of the women who lives here on the floor with flames moving over her. The front door was locked and red hot. But Bubba, who's 6'3", 295 pounds, ripped the door off its hinges.
So Bubba here was on an adrenaline rush while this house was on fire. And this allowed him to go over there and rip that door off of the hinges so he could get inside and save that woman. Now this is due to a process called glycolysis. And what glycolysis is inside your body you have this extra storage of glucose that is held onto. And the glycolysis is when your body goes into that extra storage of glucose and it pulls it out and turns it into energy, and then uses that energy to fuel your muscles, which causes you to be faster and stronger. Also, while you're on an adrenaline rush, your blood vessels are dilated, which allows more oxygen and nutrients to flow to your brain, which enables you to breathe easier and makes you more alert and concentrated. But energy doesn't last very long. This is you during an adrenaline rush and after an adrenaline rush. So like I said before, adrenaline is a high. And when you come off of that high, you're going to miss it. So your body is actually subconsciously depressed when that high goes away. And you can almost tie this back into the motivation piece that I talked about earlier, because when you come off of that high, you miss it. So you're going to seek out that high again. Now that I've talked to you about what's going on in the body, I'm going to talk to you about some of the impacts of risk-taking behavior, the most important part. There are some good impacts, but there are also bad impacts. So first, let me talk about the bad impacts. So there are three main diseases that are linked to your adrenal glands. The first one is adrenal stress disorder, otherwise known as adrenal fatigue. And this is basically when your adrenal glands are tired or worn out. They need a break. They are struggling to produce the amount of cortisol that your body needs to stay in balance. And this is caused from too much stress on the mind and on the body for too long. This typically can happen with a woman who, after giving childbirth, her body has been put under lots and lots of stress, so then her adrenal glands are fatigued and unable to keep that cortisol level up to maintain that balance. Now, although this disease is not permanent, but if it is not treated, it can lead to the second disease, Addison's disease. Now, Addison's disease is permanent, unfortunately. And what it is it's when your adrenal glands stop producing cortisol altogether. Actually, a fun fact is President JFK actually had Addison's disease, and he had to take cortisol pills to implement that cortisol into his body during his presidency to maintain those stress levels, which I'm sure was a good thing that he did, given the fact that being president is probably pretty stressful. But if he didn't take those cortisol pills, it would have heightened his risk, and he could have had an Addisonian crisis. An Addisonian crisis is a life-threatening situation where when your epinephrine levels spike, when your body is under a lot of stress, and you don't have the proper amount of cortisol, so like when you have Addison's disease and you don't treat it, you can have an Addisonian crisis. This can lead to major shock, seizures, a coma, or it can even lead to death. You can literally die from being too stressed if you have Addison's disease and don't treat it. Or if someone has Addison's disease and they don't treat it, if you jump out from behind a corner and scare them, you could literally scare them to death. Pretty crazy. So, although there are these bad impacts, there are some good impacts too. Risk-taking can be good for the development of your brain. There's a research company in Scandinavia called Syntec, and they conducted this research. They created this game, and they gathered a bunch of high-risk takers and low-risk takers, which they found out about by doing tests prior, and had them play this game that they created. So this game is a driving simulation, and in the driving simulation, there are 20 stoplights. And the goal is to get to the end of all the stoplights in the shortest amount of time. And each time you approach a stoplight, the light turns yellow, and you have to make a decision. You either stop, which adds 3 seconds to your time. You can go through the yellow light, and if you make it through, it adds 0 seconds. Or if you go through the yellow light and you get in a car crash, it adds 6 seconds to your time. And what they thought would happen is the people who took longer to decide would have better developed brains or have more white matter in the brain. And white matter is, it helps the communication between your neurons, allowing you to process situations faster and make faster decisions. And they were wrong. So they said the high-risk takers had more white matter in the brain.
Yesterday, Abby conditions were a little spicy.
So for example, Nick Nutt here.
As soon as I started skiing, like first turn, everything ramped out on me, and I ended up just kind of having to look for the island of safety. At that point, it was just like, take all the speed you can and just try and get out of this thing.
Decision which depended on his life depended on it because he was in this situation. But they also found that the low risk takers were a little bit slower.
Come on, a minute. You have a straight flush, Homer. Go! You do this every time. God! Choking on my own plates here.
Hey, don't yell at Homer. Just because he's a little slow.
Something was said. Not good. What was it? Don't yell at Homer! No, that's okay. What was it? Slow! They called you slow! How dare you call me that? Hey, Homer, you still here?
So Homer here is a little slow because he's a low risk taker and has less white matter in his brain. So Syntec concluded that when you take risks, it actually helps the development of your brain. So now some of you may be sitting here and you may be intrigued, confused, or you may be scared and never want to take a risk ever again. But I'm not trying to tell you what to do. I'm not here to tell you to never take a risk again. But I'm also not going to sit here and tell you to go hurl yourself off a 15-foot wall, because we all know where I ended up when I did that. So I want to help further your knowledge about risk-taking and adrenaline, because it's a very interesting topic, and not many people know much about it, because it's a very vast topic that you don't really pay attention to. I hope that you learned something here today. And since risk-taking and adrenaline is crazy and awesome, I'm just going to finish with a few exciting videos. Now, risk-taking comes in many different forms, as you've seen from some of these videos. Now, it's pretty crazy, and it's quite exciting as well. And you only live once, so you gotta enjoy life, you know?
It's gonna pair.
I hope you guys have learned something and realized that, yes, risk-taking is scary, as you noticed, but it is also exciting, and you only live once. I know it's cliche, but it's true. Thank you.
You're not allowed to do any of that.
All right. You've terrified all of us. We're going to open it up to questions from the audience and our panel.
So when you were talking about adrenaline or epinephrine in the beginning, you were talking about glycolysis, or essentially the metabolic process, right? So you're saying that epinephrine both expands our blood vessels,
Right.
and then increases our metabolic consumption of sugar. Is cortisol opposite? Or I'm curious as what you know about the interrelationship between these two hormones inside of our body.
So, cortisol and adrenaline, they both come from your adrenal glands and they work together. As you said, the epinephrine opens up everything and like increases your heart rate and things like that. But the cortisol works as almost, this isn't the right word, but downer to keep that from getting out of control. Because there's a point in where your adrenaline or epinephrine levels can get too high, which is bad for your body, which can lead to those things. It's a stress hormone. Cortisol is a stress hormone, and basically epinephrine is a form of stress as well, and the cortisol maintains that and keeps it balanced.
So do people ever, what stimulates the release of cortisol then? If this stimulates epinephrine.
Right, so cortisol is stimulated at the same time that epinephrine is. So when you're on an adrenaline rush, your cortisol also kicks in to, like I said, keep it in balance so that it doesn't get out of control. So they work together, so they both happen at the same time. Ben.
Have you seen any like strong connections between, I guess, or this is more of like what happens when, let's say, since it's sponsored by Red Bull, I bet you there's plenty of Red Bull there, someone drinks an energy drink and then does some of these sports, can you get like out of control or a point where like your decision making doesn't work anymore because you're too hyped up on caffeine and epinephrine or whatever that your mind just stops working?
Right. Unfortunately, I don't know the answer to that. I didn't look into that aspect of it. I focused more on like the marketing of Red Bull and GoPro and how they push extreme sports upon people. But like, here's an example. Like this might be like a little bit of a tangent, but have you ever seen a commercial or an ad for the Red Bull energy drink? Mm-hmm. But there's not many out there. So like when you go on Red Bull's website or on their YouTube page, you're not going there to watch an energy drink. You're going there to watch these extreme sports. Although, in my opinion, now this is just my opinion because like I said, I haven't done research on it. I think that people who drink energy drinks before they do something, it definitely helps kick in that adrenaline rush faster. And, you know, caffeine. And it could fog their decision making a little bit because they're so jittery, you know, so they may make irrational decisions. Now that's my opinion from when I drink Red Bull drinks. So I don't drink energy drinks. But like I said, I haven't done any research on that topic. Jonathan.
So maybe this is just my lack of knowledge on white matter, but it almost sounds like you're saying some certain people are predisposed to making more riskier choices because they have more of it in their brain. Is there a way to grow that? Is there a way to like train yourself to be more of a risk taker? Is there a way to slow yourself down and say no, like physically?
Mm-hmm. So, hang on, I'm trying to find the way to phrase it. So, the risk taking can, you don't have to take risks in order, you don't have to take risks like these people in order to develop that white matter. You can also take risks, you take risks every day of your life. Speeding, blowing through a yellow light, getting potentially pulled over, that's just an example of driving. And that white matter can grow from those types of things. You don't have to do these crazy risks in order to develop that white matter. But I think that point in where deciding if you're taking a risk too far, I think that's just based on the person, because everybody takes risks differently, and different levels of risks. Like these athletes obviously take huge risks, but we also still have athletes here at the school that still take risks, but not like that, because that's outrageous and crazy. So I think that all depends on the person, and I didn't look into that, but it all depends on the person. Yeah, sorry, I just repeated myself.
Thank you.
Yeah.
We have time for one more question.
Did you have a question?
I did. Yes. I'm curious, Grant, if you find anything or found anything or saw anything in your research about sort of gender differences in risk-taking. I couldn't help but notice that all of these lovely people hugging themselves off cliffs and things were male. Were there any, did you see anything in your studies about gender differences in terms of risk-taking behaviors, and if so, what's behind that?
So I didn't do any reading research on that, but in Kyle's math class, I conducted my own research based on that. Now I focused a lot more on more everyday risks, like speeding or not wearing your seatbelt, or those kinds of things. And I sent it out, to the school. And I'm not able to come up with a solid conclusion because I only got 50 people from Animas. But it showed that in some situations, both genders tended to take the same amount of risks, but in others, males heightened their risks. Like in skiing, males said that they were much more aggressive skiers compared to females. And I had about the same amount taking it, so it was, accurate.
Like gender balance.
I guess, yeah. But more males tended to be more aggressive when they're on skiing or when they're mountain biking. But for instances like speeding, that's where both genders both took risks at the same level. If that kind of answered your question.
Yeah. Cool. Thanks, Grant. All right, if you'll step outside for the phone, we will deliberate quickly since we are